These are selected scenes from the 34-minute-long Slicing and Dicing DVD. Check out all the Covell DVDs at covell.biz. Hello, I'm Ron Covell. Today we're going to take a look at modifying grill shells. This is a 1932 Ford grill shell. It's a reproduction made by Brookville Roadster. I think the grill is one part of the car that really sets the character. It gives a car a lot of personality. Many people consider the 1932 Ford grill a classic. And there's many reasons why you might choose to modify the size or shape of the grill shell. For today's application, this grill shell is going on a Model A Ford, and Model A's have a grill that's not quite as tall. They're roughly 2.5 inches shorter. So we need to modify this grill shell to bring it down 2.5 inches. Otherwise the hood will run uphill as it goes toward the front, which I think looks quite awkward. This is an aftermarket grill that is made to be 2.5 inches shorter. So the task for today is to modify this grill shell so it's a nice snug fit around this grill. I'll show you how it's done. Now it's time to think about the position of the cut on the grill shell. Because the grill shell tapers, we'll have less of a mismatch by making the cut low rather than high. This would not be the best place to put the cut. So I want to get it as low as I can, but also I don't want the cut to get into this curved area of the lower panel, because that would make it very difficult to fit. So I'm going to position the cut so the cut comes right to the point where this curved edge straightens out. So this is going to be the bottom of our cut. Now I'll lay this down on the table and continue making the cut lines on the grill shell. So here's how I've changed the layout of the cuts. Rather than have a cut that goes through this area, I'm going to cut 2 7/16 off the bottom of the grill shell, so I don't need any welding at all in this area. That does give me a longer weld in this area, but this is a good place to put a weld. The tight curvature of the panel will prevent much distortion from happening, and this weld will be in a place where it's easy to finish. So now I'll make the last cut. That will release the bottom portion of the grill shell. Okay, now I'm ready to make these cuts and cut the inner portion out. Then we can weld these pieces together. So I've completely finished the horizontal seam. Now we'll get inside and weld the vertical seam. Okay, I finished the last of the welding on the grill shell. So as soon as this cools, I can sand these welds flat, and I think they're going to clean up beautifully. Okay, so you can see that these welds have cleaned up absolutely beautifully. If we had put a weld in this area, it would be very difficult to get that absolutely smooth. But by placing the weld on the leading edge, we don't get much distortion here from the welding, and it's very easy to clean this up. So the last step is I'm going to try the grill in here and make sure it fits to perfection. So with the grill in place, you can really get the full effect. The grill fits to perfection, and you can't even tell this shell has been welded on. So I'm very pleased with this job. Let's move on now to something else. There have been a lot of cars built in the modified Roadster style that featured a narrowed Model A grill shell, and I really like that look. So we're going to go through the process of narrowing this grill shell. If we keep the top narrowed 5 inches, but narrow the bottom a little more, if we narrow the bottom 6 inches, it does a couple of things. First, I do have the alignment on the bottom I was seeking, but also it gives the shell more taper, and I really like the look of the shell more with taper. So this is the plan, to narrow it 5 inches on top and 6 inches on bottom. So knowing these dimensions, we can now transfer them onto the grill shell, make the cuts, and reassemble the pieces. Okay, so the edges are all cut. Now I'll deburr these and get them clamped together so they can be tack welded. Okay, so I have tack welds spaced no more than a ½ inch apart. That's sufficient tack welding. And the next step is I'm going to work this joint with a hammer and dolly in preparation for the finish welding. Okay, and I can't stress enough just how important this hammer and dolly work is. Every time you put tack welds on metal, it's going to move a little bit. And if this joint moves so that one side is up even 10/1000ths of an inch more than the other, and we make a finish weld, when we sand that weld flat, one side's going to go from being 40/1000ths of an inch thick to 30/1000ths. If I get everything flush, then we won't lose any metal thickness. So now I'm ready to make the finish weld on this joint. Okay, this joint is completely welded. I've cut a piece off the strip that was removed that has the original peak in it, and I've taped it into place to see how this contour matches the rest of the grill shell. It's close, but it just doesn't have quite the right shape. So I've made a paper template that shows me the correct curve to put on this panel, so this curve will blend in nicely with this curve. It's only off about a 1/16 of an inch, but this is one of those situations where a 1/16 of an inch makes all the difference in the world. Just a little bit more right here. Okay, I think this side fits perfectly. I'll flip the part over now so I can try the other side. And again, it needs to move about a 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so the next step is to work this joint with the hammer and dolly in preparation for the finish welding. So now I can do the finish welding on this joint. Okay, so I finished the weld on the face of the grill shell. I'm going to wait on the top weld until I have the shell upright. That'll make that easier. So as soon as this cools, I'm going to sand the weld down flush in preparation for doing my hammer and dolly work. I've sanded the weld just enough so it's become flush on one side. There might be a few areas where it's a little bit unflush on the other side, and I'll fix those areas by hammering. And now I'll sand these, and it should be getting pretty smooth. So there are just a few tiny low spots left, and I'll raise those by hammering on dolly. Okay, now we'll sand this one more time, and it should be getting pretty smooth. This is really smoothed out nicely. So I've done a little hand sanding on this just to give it the final finish. And as you can see, this is really cleaned up beautifully. So this is the last seam to be worked, and I tack welded this earlier, but now that it's clamped in a comfortable position, I'm going to work this with a hammer and dolly, and I've chosen a dolly with a little bit of a radius to it. So this will give the top of the grill shell a little bit of roundness. Okay, so it's perfectly flush at the joint. It has just a hint of roundness, so we're ready to put the weld on this now. Okay, we're ready for sanding. So after just a few hours work, the grill shell is completely finished, and I couldn't be more pleased with the way it came out. The proportions are just what I wanted, the cut areas blend together perfectly, and the welded joints have finished out to perfection. So using these same techniques, you can modify any automobile body part, and you can customize it to your desire. Learn metalworking and welding from a master. Covell DVDs, the standard of the industry.